I'm Arabella Forge, and as you know, I love talking about fermented foods. But one of the challenges I have is when you're on holiday or you're travelling, it can be really difficult to travel with a lot of these nutritious fermented foods. And this week we're actually staying at a holiday house, and typically I left in a hurry, didn't manage to pack any of my favourite sauerkraut, kimchi or cultured vegetables with me. So what I've done is I've just nipped out to my local supermarket and I've just bought some organic beetroot. I bought a bit of sea salt, and luckily I found a glass jar in the cupboard. And with these simple, 2 ingredients, I can make a really, really delicious cultured beetroot drink. So all you need is, I've got 600 grams of beetroot here. Now this is roughly 3 medium to large beetroots, and I've got my assistant here as well. And I've just got a bit of sea salt. And look, one of the reasons I've chosen beetroot is beetroot's fairly quick to ferment. So in this warm weather, this will make it a really nutritious, bubbly, fermented drink within a couple of days. So it's perfect when you're travelling. The natural sugars in beetroot ferment really, really well. So that's one of the key reasons why I chose it. Look for organic wherever you can. I think organic's always much better for fermentation. If you can't find organic, I really recommend that you just peel the beetroot and give it a really good wash as well. So what I'm going to do is I've chopped the beetroot up. Now ideally, if I was at home, I would have grated the beetroot, because when you grate it, it actually, a smaller surface area means that it actually ferments a little bit quicker, which is perfect if you want a quick fix. But I don't have a grater here, so I'm ad hocing. I've just chopped it fairly coarsely. They're probably about 1 centimetre roughly, or a bit less pieces. My son's going to help me today. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the beetroot into this bowl. And again, I don't have a mixing bowl. I've picked a salad bowl out of the cupboard here. So, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add 1 teaspoon of salt to this. Now again, I don't have a teaspoon measurement. I'm just winging it a little bit. No, I think I've actually got enough. You, though, Barnaby. So I've got 1 teaspoon of salt in the beetroot, and I'm also going to make a salt solution. Now Barnaby, you could help me. You're going to put 1 teaspoon of salt in the water. Okay. Oh dear, there we go. And again, I don't have a measuring jug, so what I've done is, this is a 2-litre glass jar. I've measured it out halfway, which would be roughly 1 litre. And the good thing about this recipe, the wonderful thing about working with beetroots, is you've got a certain margin for error. So because it works really well for fermentation, if this teaspoon's a little bit off and my water measurement's a little bit off, I know that it will still work. Maybe that's my famous last words, but 9 times out of 10 it always works for me. Now with this beetroot here, I've got the beetroot and the salt, and I'm just going to toss this round with my fingers and squeeze it.
Could I do it?
You can do it too. You can do it too. And in terms of hygiene and working with your hands, this step is actually, like, I see a lot of recipes where they don't bother doing this, but I think it's a really good idea because it actually squeezes the cell walls. Oh, good squeezing. And as the cell walls break, they actually start the fermentation quicker, so it actually speeds up your fermentation.
And it does start.
Does it?
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm squeezing and squeezing. If you've got grated beetroot, when I do this at home, I usually get about 1/4 cup of liquid at the bottom. But obviously, because this isn't grated, I'll probably be lucky if I get a couple of tablespoons of liquid. And again, as I said, some recipes, they just say skip this step altogether. So squishing and squishing and squishing and squishing. Now, in terms of hygiene, if you're looking at this and thinking, I don't want my hands in this product, that's totally fine. Just keep in mind that we are dealing with a lot of salt, so salt's a natural antibacterial agent. As well as that, my sort of rules with hygiene are always give your hands a good wash before you start cooking. And I also always keep my fingernails very, very short, because that's where a lot of the bacteria can go. But I do believe with fermentation that when you actually use your hands and you squeeze them in this way, instead of pounding, because that's a sort of another way of doing it, I actually generally find you have a better result. And I think it's got to do with actually, getting a better surface area. So there's actually, I hope you can see this, but I have got a good tablespoon of liquid at the bottom there. Beet juice. Ooh. Barney, what I'm going to get you to do is, I've got the salt in here. I'm going to get you to stir that in there. Can you stir that? Can you stir that for Mum? So again, this is how simple it is. We've got beetroot, bit of salt, and some water. Now I would try and use filtered water if you can. I just bought some basic filtered water at the supermarket. The problem with using tap water is that tap water often has large quantities of chlorine, and chlorine can actually inhibit the fermentation process. So find some filtered water if you can, but if you can't, just use tap water and just go for it. Some people say that if you actually boil chlorinated water and then just let it sit for a while, some of the chlorine can actually evaporate. I don't know how effective that is, but that could be something you could consider. That's enough. So with this excellent stirring here, we've actually dissolved the salt.
Have a look.
Yeah, look, fantastic. The salt into the water. So we've got a wonderful salt solution. So again, we've got 1 teaspoon of salt. I think we've actually got enough, thank you, thank you. We've got 1 teaspoon of salt per litre of water. And again, in here we've got 600 grams of beetroot, which is roughly 3 beetroots, and 1 teaspoon of salt. And look, if you have, there's an optional step with this, a couple of optional steps. This is perfectly okay. Actually, what I'll do is I'll put this in. So I'm just going to put this in here.
Ooh.
Oh, you want to put some in? As my assistant is doing this. One thing you could consider adding is actually a starter culture with this. Now the starter culture basically acts almost like an insurance policy, and it kickstarts the fermentation process. It inoculates the fermented food with a source of healthy bacteria. And basically what we're doing, the rule of fermentation is you want to create an acidic environment, and in this acidic environment the good bacteria can grow and thrive and the bad bacteria aren't actually able to grow. So everything we're doing with using a salt solution and also adding a starter culture creates that acidic environment, and what happens is the acid-loving bacteria, they grow and develop in this environment. So that's what we're trying to do. Now if you add a starter culture, that inoculates it with more bacteria. So I call it like an insurance policy. It's just an extra measure that you're going to have a lot more bacteria in there. But
Can I shut it?
You can shut it, yeah, sure. Actually, I'm just going to tip this last bit of juice in because that juice is really important. Wow. So if I was at home, some starter cultures that you could use would be maybe whey. So if you've got a really good quality, when I say good quality, I mean sour tasting, natural organic yogurt, you could skim off some of the whey. If you've got access to raw milk, you could make some curds and whey and use the whey in that. There's also plenty of commercially available starter cultures that you can use. If you go to my Facebook page, I've got a list there. So there's a few different options. You just add a little bit in here. Another thing that you could add is you could add some freshly grated ginger, some freshly grated turmeric. Sometimes I add a few cabbage leaves because cabbage leaves can actually ferment very well in this environment as well, and it makes like pretty much the same as making like a sauerkraut juice. Now the last step that I'm going to do is I'm just going to give this a stir. Actually, darling, don't hop up on the table. And instead of actually putting the lid on, and just make sure that that salt's fully dissolved. Pop your foot down, please. So what I would actually do from here is, stay there, just put something like a tea towel over the top, just like that, and I'd leave that on the bench for maybe 2 or 3 days, and then that's able to drink. And what you can actually do is you can pour out the liquid and add more of the salt solution, so actually do a second batch with it. And yeah, that's a really, one of the things with holidays, I know after Christmas, you've eaten probably a lot of food that you maybe shouldn't have, and you're really craving a lot of healthy food, and food that's going to boost the digestive tract. So fermented foods are excellent, and this is a really, really basic recipe. I mean, what I've actually spent in doing this is really, it's just the cost of a teaspoon of salt, 2 teaspoons of salt, and 3 organic or conventional beetroot. So it's a really low cost recipe as well, and we've got, a litre here of really nutritious fermented drink. So that's all from me. I hope that kick-starts your digestive system for 2015, and we look forward to seeing you soon. You say bye?